In this lecture, we are going to create the required actions and reducers for the sign up functionality in our application. So if we go to our application, here we have the sign up form. Now we can implement the sign up in two ways. The first way is once a user is signed up, that means his account is created in the backend. After that, we can redirect the user to the login page to log into our application. And the second approach which we can use is once the user is signed up and his account is created in the backend, we will directly log in that user. In this course, I'm going to use the second approach, but if you want, you can also use the first approach where once the user is signed up, he will be redirected to the login page. Then the user will have to log in to access the protected routes, to access the protected resources of our application. So what we are going to do is let's go to VS Code, and for now let me close these files, and here let's go to the states folder of this auth, and in there I'm going to create two actions: sign up start and sign up success. So just like how we have this login start, in the same way I'm going to create a sign up start action. Let's call it as sign up start. Okay, and when this sign up start action is dispatched, with that we also need to pass the email and password of the user using which the user is trying to sign up. So here, whenever this sign up start action is dispatched, we are passing a payload where we will have an email and password. Then I'm also going to create another action which is sign up success. So let's call it as sign up success. Okay, and when the sign up success action is dispatched, with that we want to dispatch a payload where we will have the user data of the signed up user. So as I mentioned before, the sign up functionality is going to be almost same as the login functionality. All right, and here let's also change the type, because as we have learned, type should always be unique for each action. So here I will say sign up start, and since we are going to perform this action on auth state, we need to specify that, and here also I'll say sign up success. So these are the two actions which we are going to create. Let's save the changes. Now the sign up success, this will be handled by the reducer. So for this sign up success, in the reducer file, we are going to create a reducer. So let me use the on method here, and here we want to handle sign up success. Okay, and how do we want to handle it? Here let's pass a callback function. From within this callback function, we are going to return a new state, and for this callback function, we are going to receive the current state and also the payload. So for the payload, I'm going to call the parameter as action. So first, as usual, we are going to extract all the properties from the current state, and there we are going to update the user state, and we want to update it with the user which we are going to get in the payload, just like login success. So when a user is successfully signed up, in the response, we are going to get the signed up user data. Let me show you that. So let's go to the documentation of Firebase Auth REST API. So far we have only seen how to sign in a user, but here we also have the documentation for sign up with email and password. So in our case also, we are using email and password for signing up the user. So here if you see, in order to sign up the user, we need to make a post request to this endpoint. Now this endpoint is different from login endpoint. And in the request body, just like login, we also need to pass the email, password, and return secure token. So the request body is going to be same for sign up also. And in the payload, in the response, we are going to receive the ID token of the newly created user, the email of the newly created user, the refresh token, the expires in. So this expires in tell after how many the access token, that means this ID token will expire. And we will also have the local ID, that means the user ID of the newly created user. Now here in this response, we will not have registered property. And that's why if I go back and if we go to user model, which we have created here, there you will see that I have made this registered as optional. because this user interface we are going to use for response data for login as well as sign up. But in the sign up response data, we will not have this registered property. So that's why I have made it as optional. Okay. All right. So here we created a reducer for the sign up success. Let's save the changes here. And finally, before we wrap up this lecture, what we will also do is let's go ahead and let's open this auth service.ts. Here I'll collapse this get error message. So now we are also going to create another method called sign up, from where we are going to send a sign up request. For this sign up also, we are going to receive an email of type string, and we are going to receive a password of type string. So in our application, in order to sign up a user, we just need the email and password of the user. And again, here I'll create a URL, a variable in this URL. Okay, let me use backticks here. And let's go ahead and let's copy the URL for sign up. So I'll copy this URL, and here also, let me first paste it. So here also you will see that here we have the API key. So here we need to replace this API key with the actual API key of our Firebase project, and that we are storing in this Firebase API key constant. So here let's use dollar. Basically, I'm using this template literal syntax, and inside that I'm going to use Firebase API key. This is the URL. Now let's go ahead and let's create another variable. Let's call it body. And to get the body, we are going to get the email and password in the parameter. So here I'm going to specify email property. I'm going to specify password property, and I'm also going to specify the return secure token. Let me copy this from here and let's paste it here. And I'm going to set it to true. So I'm setting it to true because what I want is, once the user is successfully signed up, we automatically want to log in that user. And if we want to log in a user, we need the token, the access token of that user in the response. That access token will be used for accessing other protected resources of our application. Now again, in order to sign up the user, we need to make a post request to this URL. If I go back to the documentation, you will see that here we need to make a post request to this URL. And to make the post request, again, we are going to use HTTP client instance. And on that, we are going to call the post method. Okay. And here we are going to pass the email, not email, the URL to which we want to make the post request and the body for that post request. And this post method here, it is going to return us an observable. In that observable, we will have a data of type user. So let me also specify the type here, which is going to be of type user. And from here, as I said, this post method is going to return us an observable. So we want to return that observable from within this sign up method. Now, all we need to do is we need to create an effect to handle the sign up start action. That we will do in our next lecture. But before I wrap up this lecture, I'm also going to modify this get error message method. So in here, currently we are only checking for invalid login credential, email not found, and invalid password, also user disabled. But when we are going to make a sign up request, if I scroll down, these type of errors can occur. So for example, during the sign up, it is possible that the email which the user has provided for the sign up, that email already exists. A user with that email already exists. So in that case, it will throw an error, and the message in that error will be email exist. In the same way, we can also have another error, which is operation not allowed and too many attempts try letter. But here I'm only going to handle this email exist error. So for that, what we will do is I'll create another case here, and let me copy this message and let's replace it here. And here let's say the user with the given email already exists. Okay, let's save the changes. Now, all we have to do is we have to create an effect and we have to call this sign up method of this auth service from within that effect. And if the sign up is successful, in that case, we are going to dispatch another action from within that effect, which is sign up success. And if the sign up is not successful, if something went wrong during the sign up process, in that case, we want to show an error message in the UI. That we will do in our next lecture. This is all from this lecture. If you have any questions from this lecture, then feel free to ask it. Thank you for listening and have a great day.